Sonic booms onto Genesis. Tengen is shot down in court. And Sony gets serious about games. These stories and many more on this episode of the Video Game Newsroom Time Machine.
I've been waiting a long time for a chance to say this. Stop the presses.
Requiescat in pace.
Makes him crazy, man. What is a man?
It's me, Mario.
What a mess.
Get over here!
Please save me.
Welcome back to the Video Game Newsroom Time Machine, the podcast where we travel back in time to see what was shaking up the video game and computer industry 40, 30, and 20 years ago. Today we're going to be traveling back 30 years to see what was making headlines in June of 1991. But before we do that, obligatory podcast banter. Hello, Peter, my dear co-host.
Dude, you screwed the intro.
I'm trying something new. I thought, go with a different direction, sell the premise of the show right on the top.
I'm totally confused right now. We didn't talk about this before recording, and I don't know what to do. I just want to say hi.
Okay.
Tradition and
Peter, say hi.
No, I already did it. I won't do it again. I'm not your pet.
Oh, okay.
Hi.
And I haven't introduced myself yet. Hi, I'm Carl. So
man,
how you been?
Oh, actually, I can't complain. I'm really looking forward to vacation, which I'll attend to in 2 weeks from now. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Yes, I have this calendar in my office, and I'm making little crosses on every day that passes.
And you coordinated it perfectly, so it lands on a week when we're doing an interview. So it's perfect.
Well, this was planned.
Yes, of course. This was the master plan.
Man, I plan my entire life around this podcast, and my girlfriend doesn't even know.
As it should be.
As it should be. So what does your wife say about that?
All she knows is in 2 weeks I'm done with my semester, and then I'm off for a while, and she still has to work. And she is not happy about that.
Yeah, but this gives you a lot of time to spend with your kid, taking care of your little one.
Yeah, but she's going to be at daycare.
Well, this gives you plenty of time to play video games, do some podcast stuff, read some comics, and look totally exhausted when your wife gets home so she doesn't bother you with work.
Exactly. Oh, you understand my planning perfectly.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is what I would do.
I know. And I just have to figure out exactly what I want to play, but I believe Assassin's Creed 3 is on the table. I got a couple other AAA titles I haven't played yet, but
okay. So it's
gotta figure it out.
Creed. If it's not Assassin's Creed, what's it gonna be?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'd have to look through my massive Steam back catalog and choose something that looks appealing. I mean, my video card essentially makes it up to about Xbox 360, PS3 quality graphics and then stop.
Oh, crap.
So I need to be a little bit sensitive about that when choosing a game. I've been also wanting to play Lego Marvel Superheroes 2, but I may pass on that and just go with some real big AAA game.
I mean, I think the Lego games are fun, but once you've played one, you've played them all. I don't know. I tend to fall asleep playing those things.
I like them for their monotony and the fact that I really get a chuckle out of the DC and Marvel ones. And I also got a chuckle out of the two original Star Wars ones. They just gave me a chuckle. It was so funny to watch.
No. Don't get me wrong. I like them. I really love the old ones, but I've played a couple of them, and yeah, as you said, it becomes monotonous after a while. Yeah.
I mean, and this is where there's a part of me that really wants to jump in, and another part that's just like, it's probably going to be more of the same. But like I said, I've got like a billion big games. Hell, I could probably try to finally play GTA 5. That would also be a lot of fun.
This would be a lot of fun.
I've got that sitting in the queue too.
I mean, I'm also thinking if you want to have this like snap and 5 hours or 6 hours have passed moment, then you just go for a Civilization or Stellaris. I think they don't need a good video card. They just need some processing power.
Yeah, I mean, strategy games, I just want a plot. I want a story. I want to do some kind of menial task that has been dumbed down in modern gaming standards to the point where it's no longer annoying. And then I get my next little dopamine hit of story plot moving forward. I am a very simple man when it comes to my gaming nowadays.
Hey, what about letting our dear listeners help you what to play? Maybe they can write in and give you some hints.
Maybe. Okay, everybody, email address is below and Twitter is below. If you're listening to this and you have some good hints that would run on my hardware, drop them and let's see. Maybe next week we can read some of the suggestions and figure out what I should play. And please, nothing that's absolutely terrible that you guys are all going to get behind just to make me play it. Please don't do that to me.
Please do that. Please. Yes, I beg you, please do that. Dude, you know what we just did? We just did listener inclusion. Isn't that great? Man, you're so good.
Oh, yeah, and totally planned. Okay, well, hey, let's move on. People are not here to hear our banter. They're here to hear historical facts. And we have to wait for that for a little bit longer because, as I said in the headlines, there's a big game that debuted this month that got reviewed in a ton of magazines, and you played it for 7 minutes in our segment called 7 Minutes in Heaven. Oh, yeah. And that game is, of course, Sonic the Hedgehog. Welcome back, Peter. So, you spent 7 minutes, plus or minus a few, on Sonic the Hedgehog. Yes. Let's get started as we always do. Explain to us, based on your experience with the game, what is Sonic the Hedgehog?
What is Sonic the Hedgehog? Well, it's basically a run through the level, jump through the level, jump and run game where you play a hedgehog called Sonic, who is a blue hedgehog. Everyone knows Sonic. I don't have to describe him. And in a, well, I was about to say Mario type of fashion, but this is absolutely not true. You just run through a level and you have to remember the entire level in order not to run into enemies. And in order not to be killed, because you're moving so fast, your brain is no way prepared to process what's happening fast enough so you can react accordingly. So yeah, you run through a level, you free little cute enemies, you beat the boss, who in my playthrough was Dr. Robotnik. Robotnik. Okay, so this is what he was called. Yeah, I mean, he has to be a Russian guy. So you basically beat Dr. Robotnik, and then you free some more cute little animals. And this is Sonic the Hedgehog.
Sounds like a perfectly reasonable game where you play an anthropomorphic animal wearing tennis shoes.
And that, exactly.
Which, I mean, granted, nowadays we look back and it was like, oh, another cute animal mascot platformer, but this is basically the beginning of the animal mascot platformer. This is what popularizes the concept.
Exactly. I mean, Sega did what Nintendo didn't. Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And so, what would you say was your reaction to the game? Did you enjoy it?
You know, honestly, I really had a hard time with Sonic because as I said, you run through the level. The game wants you to be as fast as possible, and Sonic can be super, super fast. But then you have rocks in your way, which immediately stop you. You have enemies, you have bumpers that just hit you and that throw you back, and you have enemies here and there, which you cannot foresee, so the game wants you to be fast, and at the same time it punishes you to be fast. And from a game designer point of view, I don't really get it. Once you memorize the level, sure, all is nice and dandy if you just keep jumping constantly, because this is the moment when you can kill enemies, not by by just jumping through them. So then you get through the level, but then again, in 7 minutes, you can only come so far. And I've just played the first 3 levels, and I think they were comparatively easy compared to what comes afterwards, where you can simply run and jump, and you're basically fine. So yeah, I don't really know what those guys were aiming at, beside getting money out of your pocket, spending playing this game in an arcade.
Well, this was never an arcade game. I mean, it shows up on the Mega Play, which was their version of the Nintendo cabinets with the console in it, but it was it was always designed to be a home console game.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, and it was nice. It was colorful. It really looked good even from today's standards, it looks fine.
Yeah. The graphics have aged tremendously well. I mean,
yeah,
they're just so bright, so nice, and not cluttered. The background is clearly the background. The foreground is clearly the foreground.
Exactly.
They use the limited palette of the Genesis to unbelievably strong results. Except, of course, if you're in the bonus levels, in which case the backgrounds are just the most annoying thing known to man.
Yeah, I didn't get to the bonus levels.
Yeah, but they're hard on the eyes. Very hard on the eyes.
I think I've played this game when I was a kid. I'm not entirely sure whether or not it was exactly this one, but I played a Sonic game, and for me, it always had this coolness factor, compared to a Super Mario, which I also played before playing Sonic, actually. And compared to Super Mario, it was way cooler. But at the same time, I wasn't able to play this game as a kid. I was just not good enough. And I don't think that kids 6, 7, 8 years old are good enough to play Sonic.
That's a good question. I think they are. I mean, kids tend to learn this stuff fast, but then again, when you're that young, it doesn't really matter how far you get. You just keep playing the same stupid level over and over again because it looks cool and you're an idiot kid. I mean, that's what I used to do as a kid, or maybe I was just the idiot.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I remember I became frustrated pretty quickly. So, well, sure, it depends on the kid. Yeah, but this is basically Sonic, and I want to mention that we dropped some serious truth bombs in our recording of that thing and our comments on that. So you guys should definitely go to sign up for Patreon. Give us $1 a month, maybe $100 a month, whatever you can afford. $1,000 a month is okay. We take this. We're not shy to take your money, and you'll get some truth bombs.
Some truth bombs. So what you're referring to is the video version of the 7 Minutes in Heaven, where you and I comment on a recording of you playing the game for 7 minutes, which is a exclusive bonus for our Patreon supporters.
And you know what else is an exclusive bonus for our Patreon supporters?
The warm, fuzzy feeling inside that they helped us.
You know what else is a bonus?
What?
They'll actually get to see us.
I don't know if that's going to be a bonus or if that's actually a detractor from this whole experience.
And you're gonna find out signing up for our Patreon.
Good point. Good point. Good
Dude,
point.
you know, I'm an economist. At some point, you just you leave the shame somewhere on the way in order to become an economist. You just leave it somewhere on the road, and it just stands there waiting to be picked up by some I don't know.
Dude, you're talking to a lawyer here, so
Yeah, exactly. You know, shame. What a shame. How do you spell that? I don't know. I don't know.
shame. Can I bill that on an hourly basis? Okay, enough
All
of
right.
this. So
Let's get serious.
let's get serious. And our last stop before we turn on the time machine is to check in with our good friend Ethan in a little segment we like to call the Department of Corrections. Ethan, welcome back.
I'm back. I know it's been a long time.
Yeah, terribly. So before we jump into what I got wrong in May of 1991, we have some important business.
Yes, it is the Peter comment. I'm seeing how annoying I can get before people just want me to stop. So if you're one of those people, then please reach out to Video Game Newsroom Time Machine at gmail.com. All right. So the Peter comment this time is I found it pretty hilarious how he thought Lawnmower Man was literally about a lawnmower.
That probably still would have made a better movie, kind of like Turbo Teen,
Lawnmower Man is not a good movie. It's not. It's very culturally significant, but it is not a good movie.
Like I said, do Turbo Teen. Wait, are you too young for Turbo Teen?
Yes.
Oh, one of the worst Saturday morning cartoons of the early 80s. It's about a teenager who can turn into... Oh, Beetleborgs still had production values. This is, I believe, a Ruby Spears animated show, so it was bad. A teen who transformed into a red sports car if he got too hot. And the only way he could turn back is if you threw like a cold drink on him. Not an analogy for puberty at all.
All right. So we'll leave that.
I'll put a link to the.
Oh no! Why? Why do you need to do this? Why do you torture our?
Everybody needs to have a little bit of Turbo Teen love in their life.
You already went on that like big tangent about Animorphs or whatever that one time.
All right. No, it wasn't Animorphs. It was Manimal.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So May 1991. The Nintendo lawsuit has come down from many of the states, almost all of them, and the coupon itself that they mailed out, which you can buy on eBay and whatnot for ridiculous prices. But the text on the coupon, you get $5 redeemable towards a game if you bought a game or console between June 1988 and December 1990. I'm not really sure why those are the dates. I think June 1988 is the time that they started the investigation. But I don't really understand why it wasn't like if you ever bought a Nintendo cartridge or anything, but it wasn't. So only if you bought it between those dates, and I assume you have to have a receipt of some kind to show that you bought something, and then you get your $5 towards another Nintendo game.
Yeah, that sounds pretty terrible.
Yeah, the only way that I can think of this is that they basically set an evaluation for the penalty, and somehow they thought it would hurt they thought everyone would redeem this coupon, basically. So if everybody that actually bought something in that time period would have redeemed it, then maybe they would have lost a couple $1 million technically, like to retailers, but that that's nothing really. It wasn't going to hurt them if they just paid a cash payment out to divided among the states or whatever. Then that would have hurt them more than this.
Yeah, if they had just said you got a receipt, you get $5, that would have cost them money. But this is pathetic and sad and
brilliant lawyers, though. Wonderful. Wonderful work, Nintendo lawyers.
Yeah, or terrible, terrible Jack Tramiel lawyers.
No, this wasn't the Trammell lawsuit. This was the suit by the states.
Oh, it's the one by the states. But if the Trammell suit had been stronger, I don't think the states would have given in as easily.
It was two different. It was two different things, though. There's two different measurements that they were looking at this by.
Well, yeah, but they were both looking at unfair practices at the end of the day, weren't they?
Yeah, but in Atari Corporation's case, they had to prove specifically that it was harming them.
Okay, gotcha.
That was the factor of the case.
Gotcha.
All right, now on to something. You corrected yourself, and you did not need to correct yourself, Carl, twice.
Oh no!
In this episode.
Oh,
no. So you said the learning company purchased Mattel, and then you're like, no, that wasn't it. And yes, it was, Carl. That was it.
The learning company purchased Mattel?
Or no, other way around. Purchased by Mattel.
That's what I thought,
the
yeah.
learning company. And then you said, you were talking about DICE, and you're like, is it Battlefield or Battlefront? Both, Carl. Both of them.
Yes. Okay, you're right. They did both of them.
Yes.
The only thing I care about is that they made pinball fantasies and pinball.
Yeah. You and your
That's the only thing that matters.
Old game. Battlefield 1942 is amazing, but you'll never understand. Anyways. All right.
Yeah.
Then you're going on violence and ratings discussion. You said that ratings are just around the corner when you're talking here in May 1991. No, we are quite a ways away from that. The hearings are December 1993, and then the ratings are a couple months out from there.
Gotcha. Okay, so 94. Well,
now,
you're jumping back around decades at a time. 3-4 years doesn't matter that much.
All right, and now here's the contentious one. All right, so Cinemaware, you said one of the most influential software companies of all time. No, Carl. I don't. Your case for this is merely that they added movie elements to games.
No,
that's the case you put forward in the episode.
Well, they were trying to bring that presentation level to the games. I'm not saying they succeeded, and I think I said that also in the episode. But, for example, Chris Roberts in multiple interviews has mentioned Cinemaware as, they were trying to do it, but they didn't quite get it. And
I'm not saying Cinemaware has no influence. It also has an influence on EA Sports in a lot of ways.
Oh, yes.
A couple of the sports games that they did were influenced by Cinemaware titles. But if you're talking about a lasting influence, it doesn't come down to a couple of games that had a little bit of interesting presentation. That's just what I want to say about that.
And I would respectfully disagree by saying that while the games themselves, for the most part, were failures, especially that first batch. Games like SDI and Sinbad and the Throne of the Falcon, absolutely, let's be honest, terrible games. What they were shooting for, this idea that it would even be conceivable and possible, inspired a tremendous amount of developers. And I think that inspiration is really where their influence comes from.
Yeah, that's on the Amiga. And not a lot of people were developing for the Amiga as the primary platform.
No, but you have to remember, guys like Chris Roberts, they're coming from Europe. They're the ones where that presentation is influencing them because that's where the Amiga was the king of the 16-bit platforms. So yes, in the States, it's a non-issue. In Europe, these games are cult classics. To a degree where people over here, you say Cinemaware and eyes light up. But that's just because the Amiga was that important over here. And I think it's one of those Europe versus U.S. differences.
I still think in the grand scheme of things, there are more important companies that, especially that originate in Europe. There's nothing that Cinemaware did that actually formed a structural basis for the industry, which is how, I would most define an influential publisher. But so that's where I leave what I'm going to say. I think that there's inevitability in games just looking better. And I don't think that in itself is enough to pull them up. They're definitely more important than some other software companies around at the time, like Palace Software, that you think is is classic. Okay, I've heard of Barbarian, and that is it.
Cauldron?
I've never heard of Palace Software before.
Really?
No.
And again, see, this is the software library in Europe that people held dear. That was absolutely huge. Cauldron 1 and 2, to a lesser extent, Evil Dead the game, because that was terrible. Palace Software was really big, very influential. I mean, come on, Maria Whittaker on the covers of Barbarian 1 and 2. That was defining for many of us in our youth.
Oh, okay. You like pinups. All right, Carl, I get it.
No. But the idea of using that as a method of selling the game, of basically taking those cover images, which, I mean, if you look at most game packages of the time, they were pretty amateurish for the most part. They were really upping the game. They were making stuff far more interesting, and it was also one of these first crosses between a company, a video company, a movie company, and this. Now I know on the 2600 you had a bunch of companies like Fox making their own games for Alien and Porky's and stuff like that, but here it kind of felt like they weren't just licensing games, because I only did, I think, one game that was a license, which was Evil Dead. But for the most part, they were bringing a very different sensibility into it. And those games really did have a certain cachet for their time. It was a relatively short-lived company. But
There's
again,
that one. I'm trying to remember that one British software company that grew out of a video rental business. Can't remember what that is, but I think that they definitely had. Was it Ocean? No, not Ocean.
No, not Ocean. They grew out. Well, Palace started out as a video publisher, not video rental, as far as I know. But they could have been a video rental as well. That was Palace.
Whatever. That other one is more important. Palace Software. Never heard of it before. All right.
That just shows your lack of worldliness, my friend.
I know plenty of European software houses, but Palace Software is not on the grand pedestal of them all.
Oh, come on. Next thing you're going to tell me is companies like Logiciel or Dynamic are not important. I mean, come on.
I have heard of Logiciel.
Well, see, that's a good start at least.
All right. So that will wrap up for May of 1991.
Excellent. In that case, we thank you once again for your service to King, country, and historical accuracy.
Okay.
Or something.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Peter? Yeah?
Would you like to say something about the Department of Corrections?
You're already recording. Sorry. I thought you're still involved with your Mario gummy bears.
No. Those I'm using your speaking time to consume more sugar.
Okay. Well, while you enjoy your sugar, I just want to mention that A, you lost your American heritage and went fully European on our last episode. And that B, we should do a sequel to Lawnmower Man.
A
Lawnmower Man
sequel.
2, yes. And I just want this to be a 3-hour movie of videotaping you mowing your lawn. I think this is appropriate.
So no VR this time. We're just going to stick purely to guy pushing lawnmower.
Yeah, a guy pushing a lawnmower with one scene in 3D.
Oh, in 3D. The original movie didn't have 3D, so that's how we're improving it.
And this is why it is Lawnmower Man 2. Yeah.
Mm.
With one scene in 3D, not the entire movie.
Shouldn't we follow in the steps of the Jaws series and hold off with 3D until the third movie? I know. I blew your mind there, didn't I?
Well, I'm just thinking what the plot should be. I mean, I think we exhausted it in Lawnmower Man 2.
No. See, in Lawnmower Man 2, we experience the beauty and the majesty of mowing the lawn from the point of view of the lawnmower man. And then part 3 is lawnmower, man. And it's lawn mowing from the point of view of the lawnmower. So what you do is you put a camera on the lawnmower and you film that in 3D as it mows the lawn.
I love this idea, but you know what we should do between Lawnmower Man 2 and Lawnmower Man 3?
What?
We should do Lawnmower Man 2, the director's cut.
With all the wonderful unseen footage.
Yes,
oh,
exactly.
yes.
With the
On
deleted
turn
scenes.
26, you thought you were missing something? Well, we were going to show you just how Lawnmower Man really had to push up the lawnmower.
Exactly.
To get rid of some of that crud that built up, Then he could go back down and mow that lawn. Oh, now it's starting to sound dirty.
Exactly. And I wanted to say we should do it like Peggy 18,
And yeah, we could do that. Okay. Let's move on.
Yeah.
I think it's time.
I
think it's time to turn on the time machine.
Oh yeah.
And head back to June of 1991.
Now there's a new game in the video arcade.
1991.
Virtual reality.
It's the best way, Thunderblade.
The market's very fickle.
Welcome back to June of 1991. Peter, what's our first story?
The story of abbreviations. AMOA and AMMA both lobby Congress to move to dollar coins.
In an unusual sign of cooperation, both the operators and game manufacturers associations are busy lobbying Congress to get rid of the dollar bill and replace it with a dollar coin. While initial reactions seem to be positive and hopes are high, the effort would prove fruitless. AAMA held a big reception for members of Congress, showing off a number of games. Among those representatives that showed up were soon-to-be Vice President Al Gore and gaming's favorite senator, Joe Lieberman.
All right, 2 questions. First of all, did they really hope, or was their lobby power really that big that they could have hoped that they will get rid of the dollar bill?
This was a point of contention, and the articles about this in the trade press really were quite interesting because they've been talking about this for years at this point.
Yeah.
Because a quarter at a time with inflation is becoming an untenable profit margin issue for coin-operated machinery. And the move to the dollar coin would have been very much in line with most of the European countries that had gone that way. And if you are a Patreon subscriber, you can check out our interview with the former president of the AMOA. And he was actually there at this time doing this lobbying work. And he tells a great anecdote about how one of the most important senators in the middle of this private meeting in his office pulls out a dollar bill and shows it to him and says something along the lines of, do you really think I'm going to give this up? It's basically telling them, even though they're saying, well, maybe it'll work, and, it's very positive, it was clear from the get-go this was never going to happen.
Yeah.
It was done. And so the best that they can hope for, and this is where they were really fighting over two different proposals. One, run both of them parallel, the dollar coin and the dollar bill, or wipe out the dollar bill and replace it with the dollar coin. And ultimately, wiping it out would have been the only solution that would have worked. It was the only thing that would have made any sense.
Or making the machines accept a dollar bill.
Well, the problem is this, that you need to get funding for the production of the coins. Well, the reading of the dollar bills, while possible at that time, would not have been feasible from a financial standpoint.
Yeah.
It would have been, the readers at this point are just way too expensive for this kind of thing to put on each machine. You could do it on a change machine, but that's it.
Yeah. Okay.
And the problem also then is that when these dollar bills start to pile up inside the machine, I mean, they're just far more difficult to deal with.
Okay.
And they're also more they're more attractive for people to steal than coins.
And what about a credit card reader?
Even more expensive, because a credit card reader needs an online connection. You need to have a telephone line going to the machines. And if you got a machine that's simply sitting in a gas station, that's not a...
Sorry, I forgot about the gas stations. I'm always thinking about the big arcade places. Okay, and this also rules out tokens.
Well, tokens work in the arcades, and the arcades are moving to tokens. But for what they call the street operators, that's not an option.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and the problem here really is that dollar coins existed. They had dollar coins since the Civil War and even before that. But to get them produced in large enough quantities by the U.S. Mint, the only way to do that would be to eliminate the dollar, to have two different monetary representations of the same denomination just wasn't going to be an option. Yeah. And so till this day, we still have the dollar, even though its value continues to drop.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I was in the States, I also had some dollar coins. I was wondering whether or not they're stemming from this effort. But, well, as you said, you had them even before that. So, although I have to say I like those dollar coins, maybe because they were so rare.
Exactly. They're fairly rare. I mean, in Las Vegas, they use them a lot, for slot machines and the like. But for the everyday use, unless you have them very concentrated in one place, they needed to be very, very widespread for them to be used in the machines. And I mean, these coin op, I mean, it's not just video games and pinball. It's also, all the vending machines that are also supposed to be using them. It's coin-operated laundromats. It's all these places where, putting in massive numbers of quarters is becoming more and more of a problem.
Yeah, okay. Got it.
Yeah. And of course, we'll be talking about Joe Lieberman a lot more in the future. And Al Gore is sort of a side character in all this, but his wife, Tipper Gore, was the one who lobbied to get the explicit lyrics stickers put on rap albums and the like back in the day. So, having these two guys there looking at these video games, some of them quite violent, it's like I just saw this photo of them and I was like, ooh, this is a little prescient. Well, we will see where this takes us.
Yeah.
But enough with the arcades.
Yes, and enough with old white men. Moving on to the home console market, Nintendo announces earnings.
Nintendo has announced that their pre-tax income was a whopping $1 billion in 1990, more than doubling the $477 million they announced for 1990. For 1989. With after-tax income of $489 million, an improvement over 1989's $234 million, and with sales jumping from $1.7 billion to $3.34 billion year over year, the company is the undisputed juggernaut with its NES and Game Boy and the planned September launch of the SNES, which will further enhance their product catalog.
Well, first of all, I'm pretty astonished how high corporate taxes were back in 1990.
This is
it's like
yes
half.
and no. Yes and no. The after-tax income. It's not just the corporate tax that's affecting this. There's a ton of other things that are going off of it, and they're not necessarily paying all of that in taxes. A lot of that is disappearing into investments and all sorts of other things. There's a lot of tax code stuff that's playing a role here.
Yeah, and we don't want to.
Yeah, they're moving money around.
They're moving money around exactly because it would have been like 50%, and this is pretty high even for 1990.
Yeah, exactly.
But still, they basically doubled everything, did they?
Basically, yeah. This is how big the business was. Game Boy played a important role in this. It's not as big as the NES, but in 1990, and sorry, I think I misread that. It was 1990, and 1989 was what they were comparing it to. But 1990 is the year when they just owned everything. We've talked about it in the last few episodes as the Christmas numbers and stuff have consolidated, that as far as the toy aisle was concerned, they owned everything. They had 5 of the top 10 listings SKUs were all Nintendo consoles. So the different packages were eating up different slots in the top 10 listing. That's just nuts.
Oh yeah.
And nobody will ever have that level of dominance again.
No. And they didn't even have Pokemon back then.
They didn't have Pokemon. All they needed was Mario and Ninja Turtles.
And this is how the world changed. Back then it was white bearded men were the hype for kids to go, and later on you had to get creative.
Wait. Ninja Turtles played a huge role in all of this because we had both Ninja Turtles, the original game, still selling really well, and you had Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game port, which just blew everything out of the water.
Well, okay, but then my statement isn't as fun anymore. So
This is true.
White plumbers. I'll go with white plumbers, and I have to explain this to my girlfriend. Moving on, Nintendo confirms name of 16-bit system in North America.
Oh, Jesus. Okay. After much speculation, Nintendo has confirmed that the North American name of the Super Famicom will be the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. It is also... Hey. Anybody who complains about the length of the name of our show, just look at this.
Exactly.
It has also confirmed that it will not be backward compatible with the NES, contrary to previous statements. They did not, however, confirm the launch price nor pack-in title.
Well, first of all, I think it's pretty interesting that they went with backward compatibility up to this point. And then I wonder, why the heck did they choose the Super Nintendo Entertainment System name? Maybe just because the predecessor was the Nintendo Entertainment System. Yeah, maybe.
Well, I
okay,
mean,
I
it
just
fits
answered my
in.
question.
Yeah, it fits in perfectly because in Japan, Famicom was the original system, Super Famicom. And with the name recognition that the NES has at this point, with the number of units sold, it just makes perfect sense to call it the Super Nintendo Entertainment System.
Because it's better. I'm just wondering, why didn't they stick with Famicom? Also North America. I don't mean the Super version, so the next generation of it, but the first generation. Why didn't they stick to Famicom? Why did they call it Nintendo Entertainment System? Bam.
Well, Famicom was short for Family Computer.
Yeah.
And when Nintendo is introducing it into North America, test market in 85 with a larger test market in 86 and full-blown by Christmas of 86, the home computer market had just gone through a pretty big crash.
Okay.
And there's a lot of people are sitting at home. I mean, gaming at that point, after the crash of 83, the console market was gone. Gaming at home was home computers, but that meant a keyboard and stuff. So if you're trying to sell a family computer that doesn't have a keyboard and everything, people are going to look at you funny. And instead, they redesigned it. You've seen what the original Famicom looks like, right?
Yeah.
Okay, it doesn't look anything like the NES that we got in North America and Europe. And that was because they basically made it look kind of like a VCR. They were going for that home entertainment CD player or VCR type of device.
Okay, so even mom and dad who didn't know Jack knew this belongs underneath the ATV.
Well, not just that. I mean, it's not that they forgot what consoles were. It was more the issue of convincing the stores that this is not, number one, not a console, because console was a bad word as far as retailers were concerned, because they were just gotten rid of all their excess 2600 cartridges from 83 by 86, but also because they were afraid that it just wouldn't find, if it was just considered a video game system, it was going to clash with all the previous misconceptions about video games. This is why they also package it with Rob the Robot, because it's an entertainment system. They're avoiding the word game, and they're avoiding the word computer because, well, it's not a computer. You're going to run into serious problems with the truth in advertising, probably, if you tried to pull that off. They needed a completely different name.
Okay, so they went with the entertainment system. Okay, makes sense. Got it.
Yeah.
While being on the Nintendo hype, Game Genie taunts Nintendo.
Game Genie has taken out a full-page ad in this month's Video Game and Computer Entertainment magazine, taunting Nintendo with their court victory in Canada. And
this they did with a Superman Captain America-like hero saying, "Thank you, Canada."
It was amazing? More like a giant devil, flaming devil saying, "Thank you, Canada." You got to give them props. I mean, they are a company that has got some cojones, and we're going to talk about them one more time today before we leave. So yes, but yeah, this was just fun, and I thought, in light of Nintendo's big earnings and the Super Nintendo announcement, this was kind of, people trying to chip away a little bit at that Nintendo glory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, they did. They surely did. Okay, but before we continue the story of the Game Genie, let's move on. Tengen slapped with preliminary injunction.
The long battle over Tengen's use of the 10 NES code for its games, which we initially reported on in our April 1989 jump, seems to be at an end, with the court ordering them to stop selling their titles as they lied to the Copyright Office to obtain the program code.
So just a quick reminder, those were the guys that basically called the Copyright Office and be like, "Hey, we're Nintendo, give us our information."
They didn't say that they were Nintendo. They said that they were in litigation with Nintendo, and they needed to see the code in order to defend themselves in court. Problem was, Nintendo hadn't sued them yet.
Yeah.
And so they lied to the Copyright Office to get it. And Tengen is the home division of Atari Games, the arcade company. And so if you are a Patreon listener, there's an interview up there right now with somebody who may or may not have been in the room when that decision was made. And he talks about that. And if you don't want to wait another 3 months for that interview, or 4 months at this point for that interview to hit the normal feed, become a Patreon supporter for as low as $1 a month. Okay, sorry.
Dude, at the beginning I said I've lost my shame somewhere at the road, but I think you think we're overdoing it with making advertisement for people paying us like it.
This I just say because there's really good information, and the link to that interview is in the show notes. It is.
And not only this interview, there are many good interviews there. Yeah,
the links to all the stuff we're talking about is in the show notes. I forgot to say that at the top of the hour, so to speak. But so that's a really it's a fun little tidbit. Okay,
it's a fun little tidbit. And I just one little question though. Don't you need a court order or something in order to get this program code from the Copyright Office?
What you do is you hand in a signed affidavit, swearing that this is true. Yeah.
Oh, so you basically just take my word for it. I mean,
it's take my word for it and punish me in court if I lied.
Were they punished in court because they lied?
Oh yes, it cost them money.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
You don't do that. Bad Tengen.
This was not a cheap experience for Tengen.
Well, too bad.
Yeah.
And now there comes the story, which explains why in front of every video game there is this little warning which no one reads anymore. Video games may cause epileptic seizures.
The first lawsuit has been brought arising from the possible connection of games to epileptic seizures. A 15-year-old Michigan girl suffered a grand mal seizure while playing the NES game Kid Icarus. The family is suing for $10,000 in damages. Photosensitive epilepsy is rare but can be triggered by flashing lights.
Well, it can be, and it's surely not fun. Yeah, poor guys who have this. I'm just wondering, did the family win?
No, the case actually, if I remember correctly, does get dismissed because they can't really prove the connection between the two things. And there only have been a handful of actual cases of this. I mean, it is a relatively rare occurrence. And but it is one of those things where, do you really need the flashing lights in order to make your game? So it's best to try to avoid it if possible. But I mean, you get it on everything nowadays, even television shows. I just finished watching Castlevania on Netflix, and each episode had that warning in front of it. Yeah.
Ah, man, it's like with the cookie and the data protection stuff here in Europe. You don't read through that stuff anymore. You basically just click accept.
Exactly.
It's actually a pretty nice thing to educate people not to read contracts anymore.
Turn everything into boilerplate and nobody cares.
Exactly.
So, it is
right.
true. That's true.
Isn't it? I think it's actually pretty sad, but this is how it is. This is the world we live in. We educate people not to care anymore, and just anyways, moving on, or moving back, if you want to say so. Camerica confirms plans to release portable NES.
Camerica, high on the victory in Canada over Nintendo. These are the guys who made the Game Genie, who developed it. has decided to go ahead and try to launch the Express portable NES that we reported on back in our June 1990 jump. They have also announced that they will be releasing a series of unlicensed NES carts, and rumor has it a Game Boy to NES adapter.
So they really wanted to go full Rambo on Nintendo.
Basically, this is, if I remember all the connections correctly, this is essentially Codemasters, the English budget software maker that wanted to get onto the NES. This is where they're reverse engineering or figuring out how the NES works. They've got their own chips to make games. They release also this weird setup where you plug in their cartridge, and then there's little memory add-ons or whatever, so you can add more games. And what they're doing is they're converting a bunch of their old budget English titles to the NES. And so you buy a cartridge with 4 of these games on it. And the problem is that these games were interesting in Europe 5-6 years earlier because they cost like £1.99 each, which at the time would have been like $6. But if you now have to put them on a ROM cartridge with metal and everything, and it's 5 years later, they're not that interesting anymore, and they're pretty terrible overall. There's not a lot of good stuff in this collection. These are terrible games for the most part.
Although it's pretty interesting that Camerica wanted to go full Switch before Nintendo even thought of the Switch.
Well, it's not full Switch. It was basically just supposed to be an NES with a screen built onto it. And after the original developers couldn't get a license from Nintendo to do it, they were like, well, maybe we can pull it off with our reverse engineered stuff. But the reality is the NES market is beginning to fade at this point. It would have been a hugely expensive endeavor, and they're going directly up against both the Game Boy and the Game Gear. And
well, of course,
so, it just was never really going to work out.
No.
But
in another success story, Mario is going CDI.
Oh yeah. In a full-page ad, Philips, through its American Interactive Media subsidiary, announces that they have signed up Mario, Link, Zelda, and Donkey Kong to help launch their interactive compact disc system in the fall. The ad's poorly drawn art is in many ways a harbinger of things to come.
Are we talking about that Zelda game?
Those Zelda games. There were
was more than one.
There were 3. And they're all terrible in their own very special ways. And a Mario game, which isn't really a Mario game, but kind of feels like a Mario game. And Donkey Kong never shows up.
Okay.
But the artwork on this ad, I'll post the link to it in the show notes. Oh my God, is it terrible? I mean, it looks like what a 6-year-old would have drawn if he had played Mario once.
Okay.
And was kind of trying to remember it 2 days later. It's just so amateurish and bad, and you're just like, what the hell? And it very much reminds you of what the games look like.
I'm wondering, isn't there any form of quality assurance before they put this stuff out on the market?
And this, I think, combined with the Mario movie, is going to be one of the reasons why Nintendo really doesn't do a lot of, licensing out of house.
Oh, yeah.
Or when it does, only under fairly strict conditions.
I mean, which makes sense. I mean, I know the Mario movie and...
You mean that wonderful piece of art that was the Mario Brothers movie?
You know, I watched it when I was way too young to be drunk. I was way too young to be drunk when I watched that thing, so I suffered through it sober. And I'm wondering that if you are shit-faced, is there actually something you can enjoy in this little piece of art?
I saw it for the first time about a decade ago. So I was a sprightly young man in my 30s. And I actually live tweeted while I was watching it. And my reactions, I literally had to stop about halfway through because I needed a break. I just couldn't keep going. It was so painfully bad. And the worst part is that there's some interesting ideas in there, maybe, but the shoehorning of the Mario license on top of it all does not work in the slightest. And that's really the movie's Achilles heel.
Yeah, the shoehorning of the Mario license on that is, and not at all this turtleish heads, and not at all the businessman Bowser, and yeah.
No, I mean, all of that would have worked in a movie that wasn't Mario. You know, the dinosaurs didn't get wiped out. They got stuck in a parallel dimension where they basically become 80s businessmen.
Yeah, I mean, sure. It's just the Mario license that screws this idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, of course.
It could have done something halfway decent if you did that as a tongue-in-cheek sort of action comedy, over-the-top thing. It would have worked. The fact that they keep trying to throw in little Mario hints and stuff just no. But okay, enough discussion. We will have a long discussion about that when we get to the movie.
Yes.
In the meantime,
yes, please. Let's get to this movie rather later than sooner. And in the meantime, let's talk about Sony, because Sony gets serious about games.
Olaf Olafsson, the Icelandic Sony exec in charge of computer entertainment, tells Ace Magazine that the synergy of movie studios, technology, and games is the foundation of Sony's new approach to the medium. Plans for an entry into the games hardware business are still forthcoming. The article was clearly written before the Nintendo deal news had broken. But one thing is made clear: Sony will publish on any platform that makes sense.
And later on they decided it just makes sense to publish on our own platform. Awesome.
Well, and that's what they're saying here with their plans for hardware are still pending. And Olafsson is going to be one of the guys who shepherds the PlayStation to the market. He's one of the big important people in this. And this article I just found so fascinating because in the middle of, the whole reason Mario's going to CDI and to Philips was because of that falling out between Sega and between Sony and Nintendo. And there was also another article this month. I didn't bother adding it to the queue, but where I don't think it was Howard Lincoln, but some other mucky muck at Nintendo is quoted as saying, well, there never really was a deal with Sony, and the financial papers misquoted that and stuff. Which I think that's nonsense. There was clearly a deal of some kind. But yeah, the fact that Sony has this guy who is going to be going forward, he's platform agnostic, which must have pissed Nintendo off to no end, and that they see themselves as also a purveyor of hardware in addition to software, is going to lay the foundations for the PSX that we're going to get in Japan in 94 and the US in 95.
I have just one more question. Did Olaf Olafsson have a son, maybe being called Olaf?
So he would be Olafsson's son?
Yeah.
I am not aware of him having a son named Olaf.
I mean, if my name was Olaf Olafsson and I had a kid, I wouldn't even care if it was a boy or a girl. I would just call it Olaf.
Yes,
Sorry,
I can see you
yes,
doing that. I can totally see you doing that. Yes, that fits perfectly with your personality and why we are slightly happy you haven't procreated yet.
Dude. Me more than once. Too much for the world to handle.
Yeah.
This is-
Yeah, you do know I was forced to make this podcast and bring you on as part of my community service, right?
Yes, and I enjoy every minute of your suffering. Let's move on.
Somebody has to.
Huh?
Somebody has to.
Oh yeah, dude, absolutely. And as soon as your kid hits puberty, she will. Moving on. TurboGrafx 16 drops to $99.
NEC has dropped the price of the TurboGrafx 16 to under $100, a move designed to make them more competitive against the NES juggernaut and hopefully gain much-needed market share. They will also offer a $150 bundle with Bonk as a pack-in. This is a response to low adoption rates of 16-bit consoles, which, according to NEC, make up only 10% of the market, and their research shows that price is the major barrier to entry at this point.
Yeah, it's definitely not IPs.
No, not at all.
Mm-mm.
No, there is an interesting breakdown of their analysis in this, that while the kids are totally on board with 16-bit
Absolutely.
and want the bigger, better, cooler games, that it's the parents that are bulking at this point.
Yeah.
That the mothers are like, no, is it that much better? It's a video game, just shut up and take it. And there's a famous clip from some news program around the time the Super Nintendo comes out, where this mother is just totally angry that they've released a new system that's not backward compatible. She's like, I already bought all these games for the damn kid, and now I got to buy a whole new system with whole new games. What the hell? This is a scam, and which is an amazingly interesting reaction. But at the time, kind of makes sense. I mean, even though we talk about video games being huge in the early 80s, they didn't have that super, super deep penetration into households. And the parents that are buying this stuff in 1990, so a decade later, are not the people who grew up with Atari. They were the people sort of in that in-between phase. They were like college students or something when the boom was going on. And so it's understandable that they're having a similar reaction to the retailers back in the early 80s, where it's just like a video game's a video game. And okay, there's the idea of the console generation almost happened in the 80s with the 5200 coming out and the ColecoVision, which were clearly a step above the 2600 and the Intellivision. And here I do need to give a shout out to our good friend Alex Smith. His podcast, They Create Worlds, just did a great episode about two-part episode about the 70s and 80s market, and tried to demystify the fact that there was no attempt to transition the generations right before the crash. That did happen. It's just the crash got ahead of it. So people just don't understand this transition yet, and I can understand some people being angry about it, but at the same time, it's going to happen. It's going to take off. It won't be a problem.
Yeah. This is true. And also, who wants to play Mario if you can play Bonk?
Wow, Bonk is an amazing game. Have you ever played Bonk?
No, I haven't. Just compared to Mario and the Nintendo license.
No. Bonk is wonderful. It looks like a cartoon almost. I mean, graphically, it's very, very impressive.
Yeah.
Has some really great game mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have the flow of a Mario, but the Bonk games are a lot of fun, especially if you like platformers. At some point, we may have to play one. I'll have to check and see if there's any Bonk titles that are still in our opening. Otherwise, you'll have to wait till we wrap around again for that. But Bonk was a major player. A big, huge game. Even got ports onto home computers.
Okay. So, yeah, I just wait another 9 to 10 years. Then I'll play Bonk. Looking forward to it. Really
No, it should hit the market, I want to say, around 88, 89.
Oh, good. Dude, I really thought I had to wait 10 years, so it's just 7 years. Wonderful.
There you go.
Maybe by then I have a PlayStation 5. I'm not sure yet, but maybe. You never know.
Mm.
Okay.
Heading over to home computers, yes. No,
Yeah.
Actually, the home computer port of Bonk comes out, I want to say, in 93. So we might be able to catch it then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then let's talk in 2 years, even better. By then I definitely won't have a PlayStation 5 yet. Anyhow, moving on. US Gold gets Sonic license for home computers.
With Sonic Mania rising, US Gold have announced their intentions of bringing the Blue Hedgehog to home computers. The game would never get released. Yeah, and in similar news, the Sales Curve has announced that they will be porting NES titles to home computers through their Storm label, among them Battletoads. That'll be great on the machine like the Amiga, right?
No, I don't think so. I
No,
really don't
no.
think so, because every time you ask something like that, it doesn't go right. Never.
It becomes notorious as one of the worst games ever released on the Amiga.
Yeah.
And I mean, Amiga had some terrible software release for it, but Battletoads on the Amiga is a level of incompetence and terribleness that really has few parallels, especially when you consider that it's coming from the 8-bit Nintendo and going to a 16-bit computer like the Amiga, and they just... I don't know how to describe it other than they screwed it up. But yeah.
So was it just a bug fest, or was the hardware of the Amiga not fitted to play this?
No, quite the contrary. The Amiga could have pulled it off without breaking a sweat. It's just the programmers, it was just incompetent programming. They must have handed it to somebody who really didn't know what they were doing or wasn't given enough time to do it.
Hey, intern, you have 10 minutes. Go.
That's essentially what they did. And then the graphics are so terrible on it. It's like nothing about the game works the way it should, and it's just bad. And with Sonic, I mean, it's interesting because US Gold, well, not greatly known for doing good jobs with ports. Again, lots of bad Amiga software. But
yeah,
the fact that they got the Sonic license is interesting because they could have done Sonic. I mean, the Genesis has the same exact CPU as the Amiga. You could have pulled off a version of Sonic on there. How they pulled off a version of Sonic on the Master System and the Game Gear. Mm-hmm. So you could have done it. It's just, for whatever reason, US Gold then never follows through with this license. But it gets announced in all the publications this month. All the European ones, at least.
Mm-hmm. Step in here, Ethan. Wink, wink. All right. Dude, I want to talk about things that never went fully into existence. Atari shows off stylus at the Cebit.
Cebit, yeah.
Really?
That's a German. Yeah, Cebit.
Dude, I wanted to be full American with a sword, but okay. Cebit.
Atari is showing off their latest hardware at the Cebit Technology Show in Germany. In addition to a notebook version of the Atari ST, they have the Stylus, with a capital S and a capital T, of course, which is an Atari ST with a stylus-controlled touchscreen that you hold like a tablet, a revolutionary bit of kit, had it ever hit the market.
So Atari went full Amiga.
Full Amiga? By not hitting the market? What?
Yes, by developing something almost ready to hit the market and then dropping it.
Oh, you mean a full-blown Commodore? Amiga was their computer, but Commodore was the company.
No, jeez. Oh Lord, it's on the tip of my tongue. Yeah.
They went full-blown Atari? Because Atari is the one who keeps doing this.
Exactly.
They went full-blown Atari.
Why did I think of Amiga? Sorry.
Because we just talked about Amiga. Yeah, but no, they went full-blown Atari.
Yeah, it's this and has nothing to do with a major lack of background knowledge. This is the reason. Atari went full-blown Atari yet again.
Yet again, yes. So it's another fully realized device. The prototype is ready to go. It's using well-established technology, and then they decide not to do anything with it.
But why? I mean, this thing is absolutely ideal for teachers, students, work, whatnot.
Atari is running out of money. And so if they go to these technology shows and they don't get enough orders for something, as far as I can tell, then they just basically decide they're not going to develop it any further. And running the Atari ST architecture on it just means that your files and everything are not really going to be compatible with a DOS machine, which is what people really need.
Well, then just make it compatible.
Once you start putting an Intel chip in this thing, now you can't fit it into this size anymore, and Atari would have to redevelop all the technology, plus they'd have to pay for software licenses, which they don't have to do with their own OS. I know, it gets complicated at that point. This is
dude, I tend to forget that this was way before the time of standardization.
Exactly. And this is really, I mean, it's got a GUI interface. This would have been perfect. But you would have been using, software that's not compatible with everything else. And that's really where the marketability of these devices falls flat.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
You don't want to buy into a microcosm.
Exactly. And again, Atari and Commodore never really escape that 80s concept. In the 80s, it made sense to do it because the technology was moving so quickly, and the idea of upgrading systems, upgrading the CPU, for example, of a system, but leaving the operating system the same, was almost inconceivable. And so it made sense. Okay, you upgrade. Well, you have to upgrade everything. And by this
new
point,
device. Okay,
exactly. But at this point, DOS is on its way. I mean, you can upgrade your EGA machine to a VGA machine, and you're good to go. And so that's why their days in the computer industry are numbered.
Oh well, bye Atari.
Not yet. We still have them for another 3 years.
They're really sitting on a pile of cash. It's
no. Right now they're not.
All this development.
When they finally do get a pile of cash, the moment they do get a pile of cash will be their end.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a fun story at the end of Atari, but that's still coming.
And I'm really excited to talk about the supernova of a story.
It is.
In the meantime, Sierra Network to bring popular franchises to the web.
Rumors of Sierra's online service, the Sierra Network, are beginning to surface in addition to online-enabled versions of Red Baron and Stellar 7, as well as a variety of board and card games. Larryland promises to be a graphical multiplayer adventure with an adult-themed player interaction theme.
Did Larryland ever hit the market?
Larryland hits the market, but it's little more than card games with a chat room that. And if you go back and listen to my interview with Al Lowe, he talks about how he tried to develop an online adventure game for quite a while, and what ends up really killing the project is the fact that the compensation model at Sierra. So as the lead designer, he was making his money on the back end as off of percentages of sales. So the longer a project took, the less money he was getting for the time invested. And so he kept working on it, and there was no end in sight to when he was going to be able to make any money off of it, and that's when he asked to be taken off of the project.
Okay.
Because he needed to get back onto something that he could ship and make money off of in the traditional way.
Right. And we're talking here of a time before pre-release purchases, before alpha and beta versions, and before microtransactions. So yeah, they actually had to deliver a product.
Yeah, you had to deliver a box product, but in addition to delivering the box product, you actually had to have a revenue stream. And for the online stuff, you would have gotten maybe a percentage of the subscription fees, but you didn't know if this was going to work. So you had to keep going back to the safe bet with that compensation model. And ultimately, it just meant that the developers never really wanted to get out of the adventure game mold because any experimentation was detrimental to their bottom line.
Too small to experiment, man. Just too small.
Not too small. I mean, Sierra was a big, huge company to do it. It's just they needed to do a different compensation model. If Ken Williams had just said, okay, I'll pay you X amount of money up front for however long it takes to develop this thing, then Al could have continued to experiment and maybe gotten it right.
Yeah.
I mean, Lucas had already done it with Habitat to a certain extent. The technology here is miles ahead of what Habitat could do because Habitat was running on a C64. So, and here we're already talking about PCs with hard drives and all this stuff. So, and there will be sort of an online world system coming out of the Sierra Network at some point, but it's not going to be Larryland because Al Lowe is left.
Yeah, and if there's a big enough market for Larryland, I kind of thought that. Well,
it would have been huge, especially because you're paying by the minute for the calls and stuff. It was really going to be an adult-oriented system anyway, and Larry was the big seller next to King's Quest at this point. Because let's face it, the first thing you do when you go online is want to talk to somebody or surf
today.
porn.
Indiana Jones to get a fourth outing in the form of a game and a comic.
Lucasfilm has announced that the Indiana Jones franchise will get a fourth entry, but not on the silver screen, but in computer game and comic book format. Fate of Atlantis, one of the most celebrated graphic adventures of all time, will also be accompanied by a 4-part comic book series. Lucasfilm is clearly thinking about sequels because Monkey Island 2 LeChuck's Revenge also gets announced.
So this is the time of sequels and cross-media entertainment.
Cross Media Entertainment, I believe that Dark Horse Comics at this point already had the license for Indiana Jones comics. So it just made sense to, add the Fate of Atlantis storyline as one of these comic series. But it's also an acknowledgement that, you know what, there's not another movie and you may want to keep the excitement for this franchise alive because until the Crystal Skulls would come out, there would be countless attempts to get another Indiana Jones movie off the ground.
Yeah.
And then they went with the Crystal Skulls. Go frickin' figure. Because that thing was terrible.
Well, maybe it was the lowest common denominator they could agree on.
I think it was mainly just an issue that they wanted to get something out, and the age kind of forced them into the 1950s. I mean, it was an interesting idea where, updated from mystical items to science fiction because that's where pop culture had moved to, but
yeah.
It just didn't work for me on any level. Story-wise, effect-wise, it just, not my cup of
your
tea.
cup of tea.
No. Okay.
Not at all. More cup friend. All right, but
Yeah.
I think this concludes today's episode, doesn't it?
It does. We are at the end of our voyage. Peter, what is the word of the day?
Well, considering no company went broke and Indiana Jones was the last topic, let's go with survival.
Oh, very nice. Very touching and even upbeat, I would say.
Yes.
What happened to the Peter I knew and loved?
He's dead. Call me Paul.
So he did not achieve survival.
No, he was replaced by me.
Oh, okay. You're one of the pod people. Okay, good.
Yeah. You're slowly taking over. Well, your wife isn't your wife, but I think you already know that. We'll leave your kid alone for a while. Don't worry.
For a while, yeah. Okay, well, with that being said, everybody remember you can follow us on the Twitters and the Instagrams. We've got an email address down below in case you have any comments. Remember, we're also on YouTube. Subscribe over there. Help us out. Get the message out. If you have a Twitter account and you like what we're doing here, tell people about the show. Retweet us and stuff because we are trying to grow our base. We're kind of stagnant in the number of downloads recently. We're hovering around a baseline of about 85, 90 per episode. And I really think we can get some more listeners out there. So if you can help us out there, really, really appreciate it. And that's pretty much it from me. So have fun.
Bye.